guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sonnet, the owner and creator behind Sonnet's Garden Blooms, and in today's video we are taking 5 items that I've recently thrifted. If you haven't checked out those videos, you definitely need to do the shop with me, and then over on Facebook I do my entire haul. But I've taken 5 of those items and I am using the set called Brocante by IOD, and we are going to transform them. It is one of my favorite transfers and I cannot believe I have not talked about it this spring yet. So at the very end on the 5th flip, I am going to show you a little tip on if you are dealing with a rounded surface. Now, not rounded like this, but more like concave rounded, and that you're putting a transfer down. So stick around and make sure you watch that final flip to find out that tip. And I hope you enjoy today's video.
Here it is, Brocante, one of my favorite all-time transfers. It is filled with 8 pages of all my favorite things. So florals, and you'll find butterflies, bees, all different types of fonts, so different writing, and really you can use this to transform not only smalls, but also larger pieces as well. And guys, that one, the birds are by far my favorite. You definitely want to grab this transfer and get your creativity going. For project 1, I am using this really beautiful color called Cowbell Coral from DIY. And anytime I am at the bins and I see little tiny wood crates of any size or shape, I am grabbing them. First off, you don't pay a lot for them because they're pretty lightweight. And these are a great item to flip and put in your booth, great shelf sitters. So this one, I am painting one side, this beautiful coral color, and I'm going to let it dry. Then we're going to come back and we are going to distress it and then add a piece of transfer. So you can see I did distress it with my hand sander. And first off, before we add our transfer, you do want to seal the DIY paint. It can be reactivated and it's so much easier to put a transfer down if your paint is sealed. So I'm using DIY's Big Top, applying one even coat. We're gonna let that dry and then we're gonna come back and add your transfer. Initially, I wanted to add this chunk of font to the front of it. I thought it would look really great. Unfortunately, I should have laid down my little crate over the top of it to realize that it was too wide. I rethought my decision, and in the end, I chose a little butterfly to put on the front of this. If you haven't used transfers before, they are super easy. You pull off that back piece, then lay down the transfer wherever you want it. I always rub it a little bit just to make sure it's adhered, and then take the transfer stick that comes with your transfer and I start rubbing, and it really is as easy as that. I also pull from one side and I start with rubbing the transfer stick and peeling that backing. Now you saw a little chunk of the transfer did not stick, and so I just lay it right back down and rub again, and the transfer applies. And it's really as simple as that. So I do that all the way across, and then after I get my transfer completely on, I take that backing and I rub it all over, and this is called burnishing it. It really embeds that transfer in whatever project you are applying it to. Lastly, you do want to seal it with some type of top coat to completely make sure that that transfer is sealed into your project. I'm using Big Top here, and then at the very end, I realized I wanted to add a little bit of writing, so I went and I grabbed Kindest Regards and I randomly stamped just a little bit of font here and there all around the butterfly. For project 2, I found this cutting board at the bins. It looks like it had been $5.99, then marked down to 99 cents at the regular Goodwill, and I was lucky enough to find it in one of the bins. For starters, I am going to take faded burlap and I am going to apply 2 even coats of faded burlap to this entire, just on the front side of this cutting board. Now, on the back side, I was still undecided what to do with that. Somebody had hand painted some cherry blossoms and a bird. And in the end, what I did is I went outside, I sanded it off, and it brought it right down to the grain of the actual cutting board. Then I used dark and decrepit patina, and I just added a coat of that, and it just brought it right back to the natural look of the cutting board. Now I wanted to add something in the background, and I love using the Kindest Regards set a stamp for that. And this is by far one of my favorites. It's always a go-to. I'm using the IOD permanent ink. I'm just inking up the stamp itself, and I am going to lay it down and apply it first to the bottom half, and then ink it up a little bit more, and then apply a chunk of that to the handle. And it's just very random. I just want to add something in the background before I apply the transfer. I do like to use my heat gun to heat set the entire stamp just to ensure that when I do apply the clear coat, there is no smearing. Next, I take Big Top and I completely seal the piece, not because the stamp needs to be sealed, but because I'm using DIY paint. Anytime you're using DIY paint, you do need to seal it to prevent it from being reactivated, and I like to seal my piece before I use my transfer. So I'm using this floral from Brocante, and I thought it would be perfect. It actually fit perfectly on that front of that cutting board, and it just added the right pop of color to that faded burlap. Now, all the products that you're finding in today's video, you can order on my website at www.sonnetsgardenblooms.com. But again, this is as easy as laying down that transfer, using your transfer stick, and rubbing it. And I love how you can use one transfer like Brocante and flip so many items from it. Lastly, I'm taking a chunk of twine that I had laying around, and I am going to just add it. That way you have the option to lean it or hang it in your kitchen. For this third flip, I grabbed this at the bins. I don't think it's super old or anything, but it just caught my eye, and this is going to be a completely quick and simple flip. I am just going to take a butterfly out of Brocante, and we are going to apply a butterfly to this. Now, I am going to show you that, you try your hardest to apply the transfer perfectly, and sometimes you run into a little snafu. So I don't know exactly what happened here, but somehow a piece of the transfer flipped over, another piece, basically 3 little chunks got all moved around. And I don't know how I did it, but very easily, this is the nice thing about these transfers, is that you can fit them right back together. I basically took the 2 pieces that had flipped off and I laid those down, and then I took the other piece that was on the sheet still and then I applied it. Lastly, what I did is I sealed it, and I used Big Top to do that. Not only did I seal the transfer itself, I wanted it to have that same look all the way around. So I applied just an even layer of Big Top over around the whole entire shaker. For project 4, I found this riser at the bins, and the little feet are what caught my eye. I loved them, and I didn't even realize that the top portion was really like a press board, and it was really falling apart. So we're going to salvage the legs by removing them with my screw gun, and I'm just going to go around, remove all 4 legs, and we are going to use a different top. I went out in my stash of wood and I found one that would be perfect. I really wanted it the same exact length, but when you are replacing it, you just use what you can find. So it is roughly a couple inches shorter, but it will work. So I am using Prom Queen from DIY, and this is a really fun spring blue, and I cannot believe I don't use this more often. I recently noticed that I had quite a few customers buying this, and I'm like, yes, it's really a springy color. So I am using it in today's video because it has been one of my top sellers lately, and I thought I drew inspiration from all of you. So I am applying 1 even coat of Prom Queen to both the top and the bottom. I'm letting it dry very thoroughly, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do the next step. While the top was drying, I finally came up with the idea that I'm going to paint these little legs to match. I went around and I left that little brass showing, but I wanted to just add a little bit of the Prom Queen to the legs as well. So I applied 1 even coat. I'm letting these dry. At the same time, I'm letting the top dry, and then we'll put these back on. Now that the top is dry, I am breaking out the stamp set called Le Courrier, and this was inspired by a good friend of mine, Barb. She has done several projects recently where she used this stamp in the background like I do with Kindest Regards. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to dabble with the Le Courrier stamp set. So I start off by using my black ink from IOD, which is permanent. And again, I just ink up the whole top portion of the stamp. I then apply it and I lay it down and just rub very gently over the top. I re-ink it, and again, I apply a little bit on each of the sides, and it does not have to be perfect. It is just there to add some more dimension to the background of your project. Now I'm going to heat set it just like I did with the last project, the cutting board, and that is really just to ensure that when you do apply that top coat, that it is completely dry. Now I'm using Big Top, and I am going to seal the entire piece with Big Top. And again, I just apply 1 even coat to the entire piece. The key here is you do want your clear coat or top coat to be completely dry before you apply your transfer. I have learned the hard way, if you apply it too soon, you can peel up some of the paint and the transfer will not stick properly. Now that I've given this piece ample time to dry, I am breaking out my favorite piece from this transfer, which is the birds. And at first I was only going to use 1 set of the birds, but then I thought about it and I decided I was wanting an entire length of bird. So I cut out the second one as well, and it is a little bit too long. So I just cut it off perfectly in a spot where I can actually use that little end piece for another project. I also love how you can combine these two images and it really looks like it was always one image. And I work my way down just like I did with the other one, and I absolutely love this. I seal it with Big Top, and then we're gonna re-add those legs. So here is the project completely dry. I flip it over and then I line up each set of legs on each of the corners and then take the original screws and then my screw gun and screw them right back in. It's really that simple and easy. To finish the whole project off, I do seal the entire bottom with Big Top. I let it dry and then this project is complete. For the fifth and final project, I did find 2 wood bowls at the bins, and my vision for these is I'm going to paint both of them White Swan by DIY, and I am going to then apply a transfer to each. Since last year, I have been on the hunt for wood items like these bowls. Last year, I actually found these really cool wood platters, and I did a very similar technique to them, and they went over really well. So I was super excited when I found both these bowls. So I'm going to go ahead and wet distress these. I want to bring back just a little bit of that wood grain. So I'm taking just a damp rag and right around all the edges, I am just wet distressing. Plus I try to wet distress a little bit on the bottom and in the inside. I just want to make it look like a natural wear and tear. And I love the look of that wood grain popping through that white swan. So after I get done with distressing, I do take my heat gun and just dry everything very thoroughly, and then I want to seal it with Big Top. And again, before you apply your transfer, make sure your top coat is completely dry. Now I chose these 2 transfers. I liked how they were very similar in color. Now the first transfer that I'm applying is very simple and easy because this bowl has more of a very flat bottom. So I just go in and I start rubbing and very easily the transfer comes off. Here you can see I cut around the B, and this is your tip that I was telling you about. Basically, by cutting around that B and then laying it down, you got complete adhesion to the entire B. It makes it very easy then to take each of the wings and put it on that rounded or curved surface. Same with the little legs, and that way you don't get any wrinkles in your transfer. Lastly, I seal both with Big Top, and I absolutely love how these bowls turned out.
So what did you guys all think? What was your favorite item? In today's video, I think my favorite was that riser. I love birds, and really that transfer is jam-packed full of all things that I love. So birds, bees, butterflies, it has a ton of florals, oh, and of course chickens. But yes, I absolutely loved it, and I hope that you realize that your flips don't have to be super extravagant. You can add something as simple as one little transfer to an item to completely transform it. So again, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Friday's video, I'm not sure yet. I am doing a massive overhaul of my Water Street vintage booth, and I know that I have said that actually Antique Up was next, but I had some really exciting news where I was able to add the DIY paint over to my Water Street vintage booth, so that definitely got prioritized on my list. So things that I will be adding over there will be the DIY paint, the recycled papers, and I am going to be flipping that entire booth to transform it to fit those items, plus have items that I flip and I sell, like my barn quilts and all those good things. So I may bring you along for that on Friday. Otherwise, we will see what I have in store for you. You guys have a great week, and we will see you Friday. Bye.